Welcome, everyone, to this August 22nd edition of The Truth. Where has the summer gone? I'm telling you, time is moving at warp speed. And today, we've got a lot to talk about. James O'Keefe, who we had featured on the show last week, voting and demonstrating outright election fraud in Minnesota, took his cameras to Alaska. We'll have a clip of James O'Keefe voting and exposing Alaskan voter fraud. Nick Shirley is still trying to stop fraud, and there are a lot of people who are trying to stop Nick Shirley. Go figure. We're going to talk about the scandalous Mar-a-Lago raid that President Trump will never forget, and I don't think he's ever going to let it go until the people that did it are held accountable. And then Dan Bongino goes off on Joe Kent. We'll get into all of that and a lot more. Guy Morris, author and a tech pioneer, is here to talk to us about his new book, The AI Tsunami. Dr. Brad Thayer, also an author, has a new book out, America's 100 Years War, How to Win the War Against Communism. And then Scott Wheeler, an investigative journalist and author, did the FBI knowingly miss Antifa firebomb suspects. So we've got a lot to talk about. I think we've got a great show for you today. And today's show is brought to you by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy and Bogey's Beef. Now, James O'Keefe, who originally had the Project Veritas show that went undercover and exposed people who were basically lying and doing bad things, got kicked out of his own company that he founded. And it seemed to, at that time and still, to be more about having stolen James O'Keefe's company than exposing improprieties by James O'Keefe, which I actually never heard or read any of, but that was sort of the narrative that surrounded it. And now he started the O'Keefe Media Group, and he's still doing what made him famous to begin with. And he went to Alaska, as we said, and exposed outright voter fraud. Let's take a look at what he's done this week.
And Brian Murkowski?
If you want, we can look you up first. Or...
Yeah, I just want to see this right
No, I left the ID at home.
So, okay.
Can I give you a name?
Yeah, we'll trade.
Okay, sorry about that. The last name is Murkowski.
And what is your first name?
The name is Brian.
Do you know how to spell Brian?
Brian. Is the name on the list?
You are.
Okay, perfect. So this is the right place.
Yes. State ID.
Oh, okay.
Military ID.
I think I left that at home.
Oh. Maybe I should be like TSA. A real ID, please.
Would it be possible to vote without it today?
Absolutely possible.
Oh, good.
You have a mugshot.
Oh, I think I left that at home. Blood?
DNA.
I got blood. Yeah.
You got blood. You want to leave your blood?
Can you check to see if I'm in the right place?
I can do that for you.
Oh, hello.
But you don't have any IDs?
I think I left it at home. Would it still be possible to vote today?
Yeah. Yes. You can vote if you'd like to. Do you want to do a question ballot?
I mean, all I got to do is do the question ballot, then I can vote.
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's so convenient. It's shocking that the people inside this polling location here in Alaska did not question me at all, considering the last name Murkowski is very, very unusual last name, and that's their current senator. But I went in there and kept saying I didn't have my ID. The woman said, you can vote today. All you got to do is fill this document out. So we just fill out the question ballot, and then Brian Murkowski can vote today.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
There you have it. Voter fraud, the story that keeps on gifting. James O'Keefe is an amazing guy. He dresses up, changes his appearance, and then goes and exposes people. In this case, Alaska, which has a voter ID requirement, but you can see it doesn't really make a difference. He was allowed to vote in spite of the fact that he did not have his ID. And again, we find this to be occurring in predominantly blue states Now, they do have a token Republican U.S. Senator there, but she is a classic rhino because in order to get reelected, she has to walk a very tight rope, and a lot of the times will vote with Democrats. So I think you got to conclude that Alaska is purple at best, but probably more blue. And that's where we're seeing the Democrats just flicking everybody off, thumbing their nose at us and saying, we're going to cheat, and that there's very little you can do about it. So we'll keep returning to this common theme that we see repeated time and again all across America in these democratic leftist states. Well, Nick Shirley has done great work at exposing fraud. He visited first Minnesota, where I believe they tabulated to begin with $30 billion in fraud, which actually grew to $120 billion. And then Nick went to California, where he exposed fraud. So what did they do? They passed a Stop Nick Shirley Act. Don't they want to stop fraud? Let's roll tape.
California right now is voting on AB 2624, aka the Stop Nick Shirley Act. This is the bill that was created after I exposed widespread fraud inside of immigrant communities here inside the United States. They created this bill that specifically protects immigration support service providers. That includes, but is not limited to, any place that receives money from the government that gives legal services to illegal migrants or provides health care to illegal migrants. Anything that has to do with immigrants or illegal immigrants that your tax dollars go to, they are trying to shield and actually penalize somebody for going out and exposing potential fraud that's taking place. If I were to go outside the Quality Learning Center and say, hey, there's no kids inside this daycare and they received $1.9 million, they give me a piece of paper saying, hey, you cannot publish this video, therefore I cannot publish the video online. That's according to this bill that's being brought about right now. They're voting on it. And if I were to publish that video, they'd give me a $4,000 fine. And not only would I have to pay for my own legal fees, I'd have to pay for the legal fees of the person who's suing me. And also, this bill was created by Mia Bonta. Her husband is the Attorney General of California, Rob Bonta. So the Attorney General is supposed to prosecute and go after fraudsters. Meanwhile, his wife is creating a bill, and it's here on the Senate floor right now to get passed, to protect fraudsters from being exposed. Now they're going to go ahead and vote, and there are 30 Democrats and 10 Republicans here inside the California Senate, and there needs to be 21 votes to get this bill passed. Let's see what happens. We got 4 ayes and 1 no so far.
Caballero.
Uh-oh, not looking good. We got 7 yeses, 1 no. All right, we got one more no.
Gonzalez. Grayson.
Oh no. We got 30 yes votes and 10 no votes. AB 2624, aka the Stop Nick Shirley Act, has passed here inside the California Senate. They want to make it harder for those to expose fraud to be able to go out and expose fraud. They're actually going to penalize you if you go out and do it. They're going to protect immigration support service providers over legal taxpayers here inside the United States. That's how twisted this bill is right now. And the wife of the Attorney General is the one who created this bill. We are officially in the Califradia Republic.
Here's a guy, he's 23 years old. He's gone to California, he's exposed fraud. And so to stop him, they're making what he is doing a violation of the law. Well, I think that this will ultimately end up in the U.S. Supreme Court, if I had to bet. First of all, I hope that the legislature is not successful in passing it. That's the first line of defense. But if it does get adopted into law, I think it will end up in court, and I think it will probably go to the U.S. Supreme Court before it's all over on the grounds that it is suppressing Nick Shirley's First Amendment rights. So we'll keep following this, but I think the shocking part of this to me is that we're even having this conversation to begin with. And really, when you boil it all down, is this any different than the Democrats saying that we're going to cheat and we're going to steal and we're going to protect ourselves by the color of state law to enable us to continue to do what we're doing? It seems like absolute fraud on its face on many levels to me. Well, you'll remember that under Merrick Garland, the FBI went into Mar-a-Lago during the Biden administration. They ransacked Mar-a-Lago, rummaged through the First Lady's closet and drawers containing her underwear and lingerie. They went through Barron's room, and it was such an invasion of their privacy, who no one is alleged have done anything wrong. They were looking for classified documents while the then illegitimate president of the United States had possession of classified documents in his own garage in the state of Delaware. So the hypocrisy and just the sheer demonic behavior of sending the FBI into a former president of the United States house and raiding it to find classified documents, which President Trump had the power to declassify. And my argument would be that by taking them, he de facto declassified the documents, which he had the power to do. So now the chickens are coming home to roost. Merrick Garland said that he did this on his own volition, and we've got evidence that the directive came straight from the Biden White House. Roll tape 3.
These emails obtained by Fox News paint a different picture of the relationship between the Biden White House and the Biden Justice Department. These two offices made it clear at the time, at least publicly, they were not connected and stayed away from any political interference. However, new emails obtained by Fox News from May 2022, 3 months before Mar-a-Lago was raided by the FBI, illustrates coordination between the White House counsel's office and the DOJ regarding an interview of Walt Nauta. Now, remember, Walt Nauta is a current White House aide to President Trump, who was then former President Trump's aide in Florida. Nauta was later charged alongside Trump by special counsel Jack Smith. The May 10th, 2022 email reads in part, coordination with DOJ and White House counsel are in work to start the process to confirm and interview current administration employee Walt Nauta. This event is dependent upon the timeline of President Biden's brief decision and coordination between White House counsel and DOJ, and in turn, Evan Corcoran's position on the override of privilege assertion and whether or not he seeks an injunction to prevent access. That was written by an FBI agent, and Evan Corcoran, of course, one of Trump's lawyers at the time. This coming August, Brett, will mark 4 years since FBI agents raided Mar-a-Lago. A few days after that, then Attorney General Merrick Garland said this.
I personally approved the decision to seek a search warrant in this matter. Second, the department does not take such a decision lightly.
And we're getting new reaction to these emails. Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan in the House says, in part, it's always worse than we thought. These newly released documents confirm that the Biden DOJ's raid on Mar-a-Lago was politically motivated.
So this really is nothing new, other than I think we knew all along that all of this lawfare emanated from the Biden White House. And why? Because he knew that Trump was on his case, that Trump was going to expose him. That's what they were fearful of. I have always suspected that they believed that Trump was in possession of something very damaging towards Biden, that he might be holding in Mar-a-Lago, that he could use against Biden or one of his cronies, or maybe Democrats in general. I don't know. I always thought that it was politically motivated, and I thought it was a fishing expedition. Maybe we'll someday soon learn the truth. But there's one thing that really bothers me about the way that Trump's detractors are explaining this as going after Trump's political enemies. So Trump's political enemies broke the law and went after him. But now, because they are his political enemies, Trump is not, and his administration is not supposed to go after them for having broken the law? Riddle me how that makes any sense at all. I mean, let's just say Merrick Garland committed murder. Could the Trump administration not go after Merrick Garland because he was Trump's political enemy? You see what I'm saying? It follows no logic. It is intellectually dishonest to say that Trump and his administration cannot go after people that tried to undo Trump when he was a private citizen because they feared him politically. That is, in a nutshell, exactly what they did and what they're saying now in order to try and absolve themselves of accountability. I hope the American people aren't stupid enough to fall for it. These people are truly evil, and I don't make that statement lightly, and it's not a bias. It is just a fact that the lengths that they have gone to or went to get power and to hold power are disgraceful. It was a disservice to our country, and I think it will go down in history as some of the worst 4 years in American history. It is starting to be exposed now and confirmed for the American people what we've been talking about on this show for the last 4 years. And I just can't wait. I so badly want us to return this country to the way that it had been for almost 250 years until this Democratic Party just went completely off the rails under the leadership of Biden, Obama. Let's don't trivialize or minimize this at all. You know, every former president has left Washington and gone back to their home state in most cases and lived pretty anonymous lives and returned to some sense of normalcy. Not Obama. He stayed in Washington, and I don't think it was the Biden administration. I think it was Obama 3.0. I think the more information that is released and that we're allowed to see, the clearer that picture will become. And you know that Biden didn't have the mental ability to make a lot of these decisions. So who was orchestrating this? I think in time we will learn that all roads lead straight back to Barack Hussein Obama. Well, I've never said so publicly before, but I'm going to say so today, and I think I brought the receipts with me. I've never been a huge Dan Bongino fan. I have been envious of his large podcast. I wish we could say that we were even remotely as well watched and evidently liked as Bongino's show. We're getting there slowly but surely. You can help, by the way, if you'll go to YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X, Rumble or Getter, all or some, and just subscribe to our show. Like us if you do, and share it with your friends. You could do a tremendous amount of good to help us continue to get great guests like we have later on in today's show. So it doesn't cost anything. It'll only take you much less time than it's taken me to explain it. So consider subscribing if you would. It would do us a great deal of help, be a great service to us. All right, so Bongino, you know, he just rants and raves, and I don't know how to portray him, but I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I gave him the benefit of the doubt because he has so many followers and so many people who swear by him, and people on the national stage show him all sorts of deference and respect. But I think that he's showing his true colors now. The way that he handled the Epstein files was an embarrassment. I mean, don't portray myself as being someone who is schooled in reading people's body English, but that famous interview with him and Kash Patel where Bongino said, yeah, I've looked at the file. He killed himself. He just looked uncomfortable saying it. It didn't feel like he was being genuine with us when he said it. And then if you accompany that with the surrounding circumstances, and, you know, YouTube videos have been put up that show an orange jumpsuit ascending the stairs to Epstein's cell late in the evening that he allegedly killed himself, it doesn't make me convinced that Epstein killed himself at all. But the way that Patel and Bongino, who promised that they were going to go to Washington and give us transparency, really just it continued the business as usual SOPs from the FBI. And I don't know how they were coerced. I don't know how they were brought over to that way of the usual bureaucratic speak and avoiding transparency. But Joe Kent, on the other hand, he was Tulsi Gabbard's top guy, and he was in charge of international intelligence. And his job was to guard our gates, to guard our borders and make sure that the enemy did not operate within the U.S. And he was doing that. Principally, he and a lot of people really wanted to get to the bottom of Butler. And so he went on Jimmy Dore's show, Jimmy Dore, who I actually really like. Jimmy Dore is a comedian with a podcast and a huge audience similar to Bongino in size. And they really went for Bongino, not viciously or maliciously, but just truthfully. And I would encourage you, if you want to see the interview, just search for Jimmy Dore on YouTube and watch the interview with Joe Kent. We're trying to get Joe Kent on our show, and hopefully we will be able to. We've reached out to him, and we have a mutual friend that's trying to get him for us as well. But here's Bongino's reaction to the interview that he had with Jimmy Dore. And I don't know, what do you think?
Joe keeps insisting that he was somehow, despite no investigative authority whatsoever, blocked from the Charlie Kirk investigation, although he was not an investigator and had no authority to investigate the Charlie Kirk investigation. So he responded to yesterday saying, well, I'm just going to play a little bit of it, and I want to explain how he actually outs himself here yet again, and yet people still believe, oh, I trusted. Okay, great. Play this. Can you stop when I tell you to stop? Because I don't want to go through the whole thing. All right, check it out.
I'm going to briefly describe the role of the National Counterterrorism Center in the investigation of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So NCTC analysts are a part of every joint terrorism task force throughout the entire country. The JTTFs are typically led by the FBI. NCTC's role within the JTTF is to determine if there is any foreign nexus. So that would be a foreign country, a foreign government, a foreign individual, a foreign company. If there's any foreign connection or nexus to an act of domestic terrorism, like the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So that's what NCTC analysts were doing as part of the JTTF to assist the investigation of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So NCTC analysts were operating at the request of the FBI to determine if there was any kind of foreign connection or foreign nexus to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So NCTC is a unique organization within the intelligence community. It's part of the intelligence community. It can see all the operational traffic, all the raw reporting coming from the forward-facing intelligence community, the CIA, the DIA, the NSA, etc. But it can also see the raw operational reporting coming from the FBI and other federal law enforcement agencies.
Stop. I'm just going to leave this here. I'm really sorry, Joe Kent, when he decided to swear in for NCTC director, had no idea what his job was. Notice how he outs himself here. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to help Joe and you, okay? The thumbnail is devastating. We didn't do it on purpose. I don't want to be accused of like the thumbnails. Everybody's got a bad thumbnail out there. Ladies and gentlemen in the chat who've been members of the USIC or a JTTF, do you know what raw intelligence is? Raw intelligence is exactly as it sounds. If you're out there on X or Snapchat and someone posts a video saying that space aliens killed Joey Bag of Donuts in Georgia in a terror attack, that's what's considered raw intelligence. I don't know if Joe knows this or not. What would happen is an analyst who's not an investigator would get that and give it to who? An investigator, i.e. not Joe. I've already told you they have no investigative authority at all. Someone should just ask him that question. I don't know why he keeps saying this. They would give it to an analyst. The investigative work is done by investigators who have power to investigate, subpoena powers, arrest power. Is any of this hard? The investigators determine if raw intelligence is then actionable intelligence. Joe has nothing to do with that, nor does his shop. When they don't determine it's actionable intelligence, that raw intelligence is not thrown out, but we've investigated it. There's no lead there. He keeps insisting he somehow had that bridge role, turning raw intelligence into actionable intelligence because they were investigated. That is not their job. They have no power to do it. Okay, done. I'm not doing this anymore. I can't. This guy, he can comment all he wants. I really feel bad for this guy. And if you're falling for this op, just know you're being played for a fool. Why he's trying to insert himself into a very serious criminal trial going on right now by constantly commenting as a guy who was trusted with the public trust is just disgraceful at this point.
Well, I think what is disgraceful is that Dan Bongino was truly in charge of the investigation. I've studied it. I've looked at it. I've read about it. We've talked about it here. I think Candace Owens, while I think Candace, frankly, is hard to watch, and she grates on my nerves because she says in an hour what she could say in about 5 minutes. And I think that is for money and for clicks. Okay, who cares? The fact of the matter is, I think she's exposing real truth in this, along with people like Dr. Murchison, who's conducted ballistic tests, and a number of other YouTubers that are legitimate journalists that have looked at Charlie Kirk's death. If you believe the story that the FBI has put out on Charlie Kirk's death, and that Tyler Robinson shot him with a .30-06, that the bullet lodged in Charlie's neck and had no exit wound and did no head trauma, you just must be delusional or in denial. There's no way that story holds up or makes any sense whatsoever. And so to the point for me is, if the FBI isn't going to investigate the death, and if they're going to push this false narrative on the American people, which sounds like Tyler Robinson is Lee Harvey Oswald 2.0, he's clearly a patsy in my view, then let Joe Kent, who was then the director of the DNI, investigate. He clearly has the responsibility to look into foreign interference inside this country, and especially if it transcends into a murder. But we'll just have to let it sit there. Me think he doth protest too much. Bongino, I'm talking about, and I'm sure he would like all of us just to go away. We have no standing, no ability to form an opinion or to propose alternative theories on what happened to Charlie. And I don't know. I truly don't know. I went on a radio show and was asked, who are my suspects? I said my suspects were members of the United States intel organizations, i.e. the FBI, the CIA. My suspects included members of Turning Point USA, where Charlie was investigating financial improprieties and had ordered a Doge-style audit 8 days before his murder. He also appointed a new COO, a chief operating officer, in Turning Point. There's a lot to be looked at there. And then I also said that I didn't think that you could discount or refuse to consider Israel as a possible suspect. Charlie had I'm not going to say he had turned away from Israel. I think that's been represented. I think Charlie started questioning Israel's influence in this country and the amount of influence that they have, and their Netanyahu's frequent visits to the White House, and what many people feel like is an overabundance of influence inside our country and inside our country's policies. And I was interested in the fact that Netanyahu, in the moments after Charlie died, said Israel had nothing to do with it. Well, I hadn't heard anybody suggest that Israel had anything to do with it. It would be like the Prime Minister of the UK saying we had nothing to do with it, or Vladimir Putin saying we had nothing to do with it. Well, none of them have said we had nothing to do with it because no one has alleged that they had anything to do with it. And I didn't think about Israel having anything to do with Charlie's death until Netanyahu immediately said we didn't do it. Kind of makes you scratch your head, doesn't it? So, from my standpoint, I have no agenda. Absolutely zero. I'm not interested in tearing down Dan Bongino, the FBI, the CIA, Israel, or anybody inside of Turning Point USA. My agenda, pure and simple, is the American people. Charlie Kirk was an American treasure. He's the smartest person I've ever had the pleasure of meeting and knowing. And he was a patriot. And I do believe fervently that he was a disciple of Jesus and believed in God and the scripture. He could quote the Bible better than any preacher I've ever known. And somebody ripped him away from us savagely, publicly, disgracefully. The American people at least deserve to know, and his children and his parents, his family and his wife, I think, deserve to know who killed Charlie Kirk. That's all we are asking and, in fact, demanding. Well, that's the monologue for today. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being with us. We're going to run a couple of commercials here real quick so we can pay some bills. And then we're going to get right to the show and 3 great interviews, Guy Morris, Dr. Brad Thayer, and Scott Wheeler, coming up next on The Truth. Thank you for joining us. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Today's broadcast is brought to you in part by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy. They're a restaurant services company in North Georgia. They will sanitize the front of the house, the back of the house, remove your waste vegetable oil, clean your grease trap, and your vent hoods. If you're tired of slow, inconsistent, unreliable, and dirty service from your provider, check out PCRenergy.com. They're in Atlanta, no automated attendance, and they'll give you a quick response. PCRenergy.com, where you get to speak to a live person, no automated attendance, and they give clean, good, reliable service, locally owned and operated in Atlanta. It's www.pcrenergy.com. It's delicious, it's nutritious, and best of all, no dishes. We're talking about Bogey's Beef Jerky, of course. Premium craft beef jerky that's taken off at the most prominent golf courses and resorts across America. Made for the turn, the road, or whenever you need a bold, protein-packed snack, Bogey's delivers the rich flavor and that premium chew every time. From smoky heat to Pineapple Express, try some Bogey's beef. They've got a flavor for every player. Bogey's Beef Jerky, tee it up, tear it up, and enjoy. It's hard to open the newspaper today or turn on the television without hearing or reading that someone is talking about artificial intelligence. Our next guest, Guy Morris, has written a book called The AI Tsunami, a survival guide for humanity. Here to break it down for us is Guy Morris. Welcome to The Truth.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
So what led you to write the book?
40 years of working in the tech industry and seeing the realization and watching the technology advance faster than any of us really had anticipated, and not seeing the kind of guardrails we would like to see in order to keep this safe for humanity. And so I started by writing some thrillers, hoping to do the whole Michael Crichton thing of, getting people excited with the narrative story like he did with Jurassic Park. And those have won multiple awards, but I felt like I needed to go a step farther and really help people get over their fear and help develop a plan for how they're going to approach this inevitable event.
Well, the technology does seem to be advancing at an ever increasing rate. What do you think the world will look like in 5 years from now relative to AI?
Oh, well, that's a really complicated question. Which aspect of the world are we talking about? There are a number of different areas that AI will affect, from job markets to productivity to investments, the stock market, environment, or the power grid, water supplies, relationships, elections, war developments. AI is a technology that could impact dozens of different aspects of our lives, and some of it in paradigm changing ways.
Well, so, don't you think most of it is going to be overwhelmingly positive? I mean, I'll just give you a brief example. My mom, God love her and rest her soul, was a wonderful cook, and she collected recipes as a hobby. And we all loved it when she would actually cook and use her recipes, and they were delicious. So when she passed away, I got all of the recipes. My wife also likes to cook. My mom would never share them with anybody when she was living, but I wanted to share them with my wife, and I did. And so I asked her to cook something, and she went and found the recipe. Darned if it wasn't all in shorthand. You couldn't read it. So I just moved, and in the course of the move,
Mom didn't want to share.
I unpacked boxes, and there were the recipes. And I said, I'm just going to try something. I took a picture of it in Grok, and Grok transposed the recipe perfectly. And now I have resurrected several hundred of my mom's recipes. I mean, it really is mind-boggling what it's capable of doing.
I have been an advocate for technology my entire career. I was advocating for technology before there was a single computer on any desktop in America. And so I've gone through waves and waves and waves of these changes, watching early adopters make some classic mistakes and others basically avoid it and lose their competitive edge. And we're in kind of a paradigm. There's no question that AI will bring some incredible innovations, and more so than recipes out of Grok. AI will help solve cancers, will help create better drugs, new materials, will help solve large intractable problems that we're having difficulties solving today because of the massive amounts of data. AI will benefit. AI's already got applications that can fit on your phone that can basically scan for heart disease in infants, prenatal heart disease in infants before they're even born. AI is faster at detecting cancer cells out of MRI scans, faster and more accurate than any doctor on the planet. There are going to be benefits. The questions that I'm asking are, what are the costs, and are we prepared for those? In installing every major, expensive, complicated, risky enterprise system I've ever worked on, one of the key things that I was always able to teach my teams to do and teach my customers to do was the value of a really rigorous risk management process, weighing the pros and the cons, what can go wrong, how could it go wrong, how are we going to mitigate or deal with that if it does. And right now we're dealing with a social, global, consequence kind of conversation, and we're not really having enough of those conversations about who are going to be the winners and who are going to be the losers, and what could be the transition of our humanity in the process.
Well, we all have an optimism bias, I think, and so I've just have just looked forward to all the benefits of artificial intelligence. I had to drive on I-95 this morning, and I entered my destination and hit the go button on my Tesla Model X. And 20 minutes later, I arrived in the parking lot, and the car pulled into the parking space. It's
Great
truly
benefit.
amazing.
Great benefit. Absolutely. But what about lethal autonomous weapons that get out of control? What about, did you know that on the dark web today, there are products that can be downloaded and purchased called dark web, fraud GPT, worm GPT, chaos GPT, darkbird? These are applications, AI applications designed to specifically create malware. and phishing and other frauds. Deep fakes have already cost some companies in England hundreds of thousands of dollars because they were good enough to be able to convince a CEO to transfer $250,000 to somebody that turned out to be deep fake. And that's happened more than once.
Oh, yeah.
We're also looking at the environmental issues of some of these data centers. Now, there's almost 300 of them planned. They're stalling a little bit because of the extreme power grid, water depletion, and other costs. So the question is, if a community loses their water and their power costs double or triple, and so that we can get trinkets like being able to download and do a menu or a recipe. Those are great things. I'm not saying there aren't going to be great things.
No, I understand your point.
Is that we really need to do the cost benefit analysis on this before it's too late.
Well, how do you control it? Because I think every country, every major country in the world, Russia, China, you pick it, they've got their own AI. And, you know, we have a difficult time controlling them as it is. We can't get Russia out of the Ukraine, and China wants to move on Taiwan, and then you know what's going on in Iraq, or Iran rather, and we can't control our adversaries physically. How are we going to do it with computers?
We have had success in the past with nuclear weapons, developing SALT treaties and other treaties to say if these are left out of control, they could be bad for humanity. Let's make sure that we're protecting our citizens and ourselves by agreeing to where those boundaries and those guardrails are going to be, and what do we do if we cross them. That's not unheard of, and that's something we should be doing. There was a treaty, in discussion, it was non-binding in around 2018-19 called LAWS, Lethal Autonomous Weapons Systems. 140 countries signed up for it. LAWS basically said it's great to use AI to improve the accuracy of a weapon, the operation of a weapon, the design of a weapon, but there needs to be a human in the decision loop before that weapon is allowed to take a life. And lethal autonomous weapons basically allows weapons to basically decide that you're a target and decide that it's time for you to go without any human involved. And we already know, one of my books, Swarm, talks about what some of those weapons that the U.S. is working on. My book, The Last Ark, talks about some of those weapons that Israel's working on in China. And so we're dealing with things that are already in place and are already in progress. Is it a problem? Absolutely. Should we be aware of it? Did it stop our lives in the Cold War? No, we went on living. We went to work. We went to school. We went our lives. But there was an underlying threat to humanity that was unresolved until we could agree to resolve it. And so my argument is we should be working on those treaties now.
Good point. I agree with you. Where did you spend the early part of your your career in high tech?
Well, I started off. I got notoriety in college. I built a macroeconomic model that outperformed the Federal Reserve and changed how the world builds models to this day. That got me accepted into the Harvard MBA program. I got a full scholarship to my grad school in Arizona. I was given a job at IBM, and I started off in high tech with IBM and Burroughs, building high tech mainframe machines. Moved there to a big oil company, exploration company, Occidental, where I was reporting to CXOs for strategy planning, M&A, all kinds of other analysis. And then I decided that I wanted out of the oil business. The oil business, I have children and grandchildren. I just had my first great-grandchild, and I wanted to leave a healthier environment for them. Thank you. And so I moved into the tech industry, starting off with a small startup company, and then moved into Oracle and then Microsoft.
Well, you've had a wonderful career. So I've, as I said, I'm kind of more focused on the positives of AI. What do you, and I'm not saying that that's a good thing. I think we all need to be conscious of the potential pitfalls, and that we ought to be encouraging the policymakers to be proactive on it. I get your message loud and clear, and I certainly concur, but I'm equally, or maybe a little more, excited about the potential of what AI can do for us. What are some of the things that you feel like are the most exciting?
And to be clear, in the book, I go through all of the goods, the bads, the uglies of AI. I help you understand the history, the certain components, things you're using today, what parts don't have hardly any risk at all, where do we see the risk, and how can you as an individual or a professional or small business owner build a strategy for you to both thrive and survive. So it's not that we should ignore AI. AI is all bad. What I am saying in the book is that there's a lot of pieces that you do need to be aware of and be cautious of while you're planning for how to take advantage of it. So, for example, right now, biometric identification is really popular. Even some of the bigger companies, my old company, Microsoft, is pushing it. I think it's dangerous. It's using your thumbprint or your facial recognition or iris scan to provide for your personal data security. The problem is we all think that somehow these systems are secure, and they're not. In 2001 or 2021, 2.5 million identities were hacked out of Clearview, which is the company that's at the airports to help process people through the airport faster by validating your identity. Great idea, but there was a lot of government employees, a lot of executives, some of the members of Microsoft that I know were part of that program, all of us thinking this is great technology until it was hacked, and all 2.5 million of those identities were sold on the dark web.
Unbelievable. So what would people use the stolen identities for?
I can now have all the digital data for your facial recognition. I can use a deep fake to reproduce it, and I can use that information to basically hack into a security system.
That is scary stuff.
And if they had stolen your password and your ID and your password, that's a pain in the butt to reset. But you can reset it. Once they have your
if they haven't cleaned your bank account out before you get to it.
Yeah, once they have your facial identity, once they have your biometrics, they own you for good. You'll never get that identity back.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just one area.
Yeah.
Fraud areas. There's a number of people who are getting calls right now. Dad, this is your daughter, your son. I just had a car accident. They won't tow me unless I give them Bitcoin. I need you to send Bitcoin to this account right away. I'm in the middle of nowhere. Help me out, Dad. Mm-hmm. And people are falling for that because the voices sound exactly like their interactions with relatives.
Yeah, that's scary.
They're deep fakes. And so if you're not aware of what's going on, you could easily fall into these things.
So I've heard every family should have a key word that if you get that call, you say, who is grandmommy? And it's
well, you don't want to do something that could be easily found online through social media or any other means. You have to have something that isn't available someplace else.
Right.
But that is a good strategy, is to have that keyword or that key phrase to basically pass through. Another one is just simple. Call your daughter right back. Hey, did you just call me?
Mm-hmm.
No? Okay, well, then I just got a scam call. So
I get an email a day.
Awareness.
I get an email a day, if not 2 or 3, encouraging me to do something that requires me to open an attachment. And I look at the sender, and it has my company's name on the line, and then I click on it, and it's somebody in Siberia that is actually sending it. And so if there's an attachment and I'm not expecting it, it just gets deleted.
Now, some of the other things that we could be concerned with is mass surveillance. China's already doing this. And they're doing it with some of our technologies, and we're now moving closer in that direction as well. So these are things that should involve, what I'm telling people is that this is not something where it's good for you to just sit by and let it happen. If you want to have more control over your own personal lives and your children, could affect your careers, could affect education, could affect jobs, could affect governance, could affect data centers in your community, water tables in your community, power grids. This is the time to get engaged, to be informed, to know what's going on, and then get engaged in your community, in your schools, and in your families to help prepare.
Guy, don't you think the horse is already out of the barn, though? I mean, we got flock cameras on every intersection, license plate
it's not going anywhere.
In every
That's
neighborhood.
why I'm telling people to get on and get engaged with this, because it's not going anywhere.
Well, what is your engagement going to do? They ain't going to take down those cameras. They're not going to stop reading license plates.
But you could get involved with your civic communities and say, we don't want those cameras in our communities. And some communities are being successful in taking them down or disconnecting them.
But don't
Not
the
all,
benefits
but
outweigh the perceive or the potential harm in that they
that
really do
depends
help
on.
find bad guys, right?
So should they be watching all of us to catch the few of us that are bad guys? That's the question that I can't answer for you.
Well,
Everyone else,
I know
we
that I was surveilled this morning when I got on I-95,
Mhm.
but I don't think anybody was actually watching me. I just think it's there if they need to find me, or if I was wanted, then it would, through whatever recognition, it would pop up. I guess a license plate reader or something would detect.
An AI could watch 24/7. So if there's a person there or not anymore, is no longer relevant. The AI could be looking for certain things, and AIs are prone to make mistakes as well. The question that I try and pose people is that what we're dealing with is a paradigm change on 3 levels. And how it might play out, whether it'll be dystopian or utopian, will depend on decisions that we're making in our lives and in our communities and our governance. The 3 levels are simple. AI will become smarter than any human on the planet, and that's not within decades, that's only within a year or two, if it hasn't already achieved that in a lab somewhere. 2, AI will replicate. The current commercial version of Claude is already 80% written and tested by Claude. The other AIs are not far behind that, usually in the 60 to 70% range. But the fact is, we're getting closer and closer to a machine that can correct and update and code itself without humans being involved. And so the old Jurassic Park movie, right? Life will find a way. This is a digital form of life. And the third one, which is I think the most frightening, which is we are already training these machines right now, certain selected machines, not all of them, but we are training certain AIs on how to target and kill humans without a human involved. Those 2 or 3 things combined represent areas that are unknown in human history. We've never not been the smartest thing on the planet. The question I always ask is, okay, that's great. Let's not assume that the technology is evil or benign. It reflects humanity, which means it reflects both our good and our dark angels. And we're already seeing AIs learn how to do malicious things like deceive and manipulate and harm people. So the question I have, though, I think the more immediate concern that I address is, are we mature enough as a species to have this powerful technology in the world without having guardrails and controls? What happens if a drug lord gets it, a sociopathic billionaire, a dictator, a warlord, a corrupt politician or CEO? The potential for using this technology for harm in a very subtle, almost imperceivable way is high. And so it's important for us to be aware of what's going on, protect ourselves personally, and then advocate for those things socially that we want to accept.
So am I going to have a little buddy following me around very soon to mow the grass, clean the dishes, and make the bed?
Little Rosie the robot. Yeah, we're all hoping for one of those. Yeah, I want a Rosie. I'm actually more excited for my flying car.
Yes.
I live on the Puget Sound across the water. I have to take a ferry if I want to go anywhere, and so I would love to just be able to buzz over and buzz over the water. And
there are a couple of that are already commercially available, and they don't cost that much money. I spend a lot of time on YouTube, probably too much according to my wife, but there's some fascinating stuff there. And just in the last week, I've noticed there is a deluge of videos about flying cars, and one I saw was basically a lawnmower with a seatbelt. Is for like 15 grand. And then there's another one that looks more futuristic that's for $55,000. I would buy one out there. I'm sorry?
There are some risky ones out there, but there's some also high production ones out there, like the Jetson. Sure. China's going to make some prices. Well, right now, the good ones are running around 150,000, but that price will come down over the next few years.
Yeah, but a lot of people pay that much for a souped up automobile. I'd much rather have a flying souped up automobile.
That's right.
My problem is that I live a mile from Mar-a-Lago, and I'm in the temporary flight restricted area, that temporary for the 4 years. And so I would probably make it from my front yard to the seawall before I got shot down. Or
yeah, I don't think any of them come with missile defense yet.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it would be well received.
You just got to go with the flow. But yeah, I'm an advocate for the technology, but I'm an advocate for the technology and protecting people. We've already seen people get hurt. And the AI executives themselves are saying that we need greater guardrails. They need greater global alliance onto what the guardrails and the boundaries are going to be on this. In part because it's very difficult to develop something where you've got half a dozen states looking at different things different ways, and you've got different countries looking at different things different ways. If no other reason than for the business continuity, it's in our best interest to basically get together and agree on what the legislation guardrails that we want to place on these technologies are, so that the companies themselves aren't being whipsawed around. Now, part of that whipsaw that we saw recently with Mythos and Fable 5 is that many countries, and I've seen some articles from India and Canada and the EU that are saying that it's possible that the American AI models are going to be too unreliable in terms of access. They need to either develop their own, or in India's case, they're more likely scenarios to take one of the open source models out of China. So that's lack of clarity, continuity, and around some of these areas of growth and regulation are causing the kind of business uncertainty that's pushing customers elsewhere. And that could be strategically disastrous for us in the long run.
Well, we're seeing it kind of played out in real time right now. Elon Musk has been calling for proactive regulation of AI for at least 5 years. And then, you've got his nemesis, Sam Altman, who is rumored, people are suggesting that he may have committed murder. And Elon Musk has said that he's stolen a charity. So who do you want to manage your AI?
Well, I don't trust Elon Musk as far as I can spit, but that's just me.
Well, I'd love to have that conversation with you, because I am a huge Elon Musk fan. I mean, what is it I need to be concerned about?
Well, he's a hype man. He's made a lot of technical promises over the years of things he can't deliver. He often steals the great technologies of other people.
What has he promised that he has not delivered?
Well, there was a fast rail under LA that is never going to come to pass.
Well, I don't think that was Elon's project. I think that was Gavin Newsom's project. He had talked about boring from San Francisco to LA, but I think he concluded it was more expensive, that there was not a cost benefit.
The other thing is, I realize that Elon's becoming wealthy on our tax dollars. His other businesses are good, but they don't have the great value. The SpaceX is basically personalizing our space program, and rather than it being our tax dollars going to something that's owned by us, it's basically making one man wealthy.
Well, if he had
with that kind of model,
as
an economist,
if the federal government, our federal government, NASA, could have done it better, cheaper, and faster, don't you think they would have done it? Elon Musk has developed the highest payload rocket ever to be developed by man, and it is also reusable. It comes back down and is captured. I think you're really underselling his value, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think that should be a personal value. I think that should be a national value.
Okay, it's a national value. He's putting satellites into outer space that will give the entire world connectivity to the internet and the telephone. What's your concern about that? Nobody else has done it.
Well, it's not that they couldn't, and it's not that they wouldn't necessarily, and not that we couldn't otherwise. I'm just not. I don't trust his ethics, and I don't trust his morals.
Well, I study him every day, and I have for the last 10 years.
That's a side issue. We probably are sidetracking here toward the issue that we all affects all of us, which is what do we do with AI?
Well, I mean, you've indicted someone I have a tremendous amount of respect and regard for, so I feel obligated to challenge you on that statement.
My apologies.
And he's developed the autonomous car, which has the potential to save 45,000 lives in this country every year. It's already safer than the human driver, and when it gets to full autonomy, it should save enormous
Well, see,
lives
that's
and
part of the thing. He takes
paralysis.
credit for developing things that other people have developed.
Well, who else has developed it?
The Waymo. There's half a dozen.
Waymo is geofenced. It's only good if you're in a 5 mile radius of it, and it cost $120,000, and the robo-taxi or robo-car cost $30,000.
What I'm saying is he has a version of the technology that some people like and some people don't, but he didn't develop the technology itself. He takes credit for those things, but he doesn't develop them.
Well, who developed the Tesla autonomous vehicle? There's no one else like it. It's all vision. And
he bought Tesla.
Huh?
He bought Tesla. He
bought the electric car that Tesla had. Yes, he did buy the company, but they hadn't paid
navigation systems. But the navigation systems have been made by several companies. There are several companies making these, including Chinese companies, European companies, American companies. So there's a broader competition for some of these things, and I think a lot of people realize.
Well, that's fine. Let the free market system pick the winner. Let the free market system pick the winner then.
Okay, let's do it.
Well, so far, Tesla has got the #1 and #2 car in the world in terms of consumer adoption. The Model Y and the Model 3 are the two most popular cars in the world, electric and ICE combined.
I'd like to really see the numbers on that. That doesn't sound quite right, but maybe you're right.
Hey, ask ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's been a spirited, lively conversation towards the end. I'm sorry I ripped off a scab there, Guy, but I do share your enthusiasm and your words of caution about artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
It was getting me to my next question. Super artificial intelligence. Isn't that the one we really have to be worried about?
AGI and super artificial intelligence. Yes, we do. That's the next stage of the development, and we're moving there much faster than most people realize. And the government is moving much faster than the commercial sector. So because they don't have to worry about scale and multiple consumer issues, they can develop technologies in a lab for specific, more narrow purposes. In the late 90s, I discovered that a program had escaped, a spy program had escaped the NSA labs at Sandia and was never recaptured. And I know it's true because I was able to reverse engineer how they would architect something that could escape and basically stay invisible. And then I basically overlaid why I thought they might want to, what sort of espionage, goals would they have with this. And I must have been close enough because they sent 2 FBI agents to my door.
Can you repeat what you just said? Because I think I heard you, but I'm not sure I followed you exactly.
There was an Associated Press article about a program, a spy program that escaped the Lawrence Livermore Labs at Sandia, which is an NSA DARPA spy lab. And at first I thought it might be a typo. I spent close to a year trying to look up the architectures to reverse engineer. If it were not a typo, how would they architect this and why would they design it that way? And I must have been good enough because they sent 2 FBI agents to my door. The point that I'm making.
And what did those FBI agents ask you when they got to your door?
Oh, they were freaked out. They were freaked out that I knew about this top secret program that was missing, and they wanted to know how I knew. And I showed them the little three sentence Associated Press article and then all of my research. And I just said, I'm a nerd. I said, you should hire me.
Yeah.
I was over the top obnoxious with them, which is probably not good, but it was the greatest night ever. But
kind of like getting you talking about Elon Musk. Are you saying you were like that? I'm joking. I'm pushing your buttons.
I did it. You guys wouldn't be here if I was wrong. This is so cool. I'm telling all my friends, what part did I get right? Like, hey, you guys want to drink? You can't drink. Hey, you should give me a job. You can't give me a job. It was back and forth. They gave me the "we are not amused" speech. I gave them, "what are you going to do about it?" shrug. And then my wife came home and gave me the "honey, why are there 2 FBI agents in my dining room? This is better be a damn good story" speech.
How long did they stay with you?
About an hour.
All right, so this technology that escaped the lab did exactly what to spy on?
That was, the things that it could do at the time were to turn on your telephone on your desk without turning on the light. It could basically activate your webcam and your web microphone without turning on the light and notifying you in any way. It could use the pixels in the old style of monitor. You can't do it with the new flat screens, but the old style of monitor, you could actually reverse the polarity on the pixels even if the monitor was off, and use it as a rough camera. I could basically sneak in an application that could stay invisible, that could spoof your keyboard, so I could figure out everything you were typing. It was basic espionage stuff, right? And all premised on old chip designs in the early versions of computers, where NASA basically collaborated with the chip manufacturers to create backdoors. So these were things that, bits and pieces of information here and there through technical journals over a number of years. And because I was in the tech field and I knew architects, and we had a lab and we did all these other things, I could go kind of theorize and then go test out the idea.
So are you telling me that we should probably throw our Alexa device away?
Oh, yeah, they're already listening to you. And if you're not doing anything illegal, for years I knew the FBI was watching me constantly on my phone and computers. And every once in a while I just tease them and I just say, hey guys, did you make sure you get that? You want me to say it again? So if you're not doing anything, illegal, I'm pretty much I don't really fear the law.
I'm kind of where you are. I mean, I think that if someone wants to listen in on our conversations or watch our daily habits, that it would be a wonderful medical cure for insomnia. So just bring it on. I'm happy to help.
That said, I don't agree that the government has the right to privacy to break.
No question. I'm being flippant.
And the fact that they do it, and I was with Microsoft when the Prism project came from the NSA after 9/11. And so I've been seeing this advance of the ability to watch and see what we're doing on a detailed basis move forward over 25 years. And after 25 years, I have the ability to project forward where the technology can go. And then I have to ask the question, is our society, is our governance, are we secure from the people in power as much as from the technology? And that's where technology can be abused. And that's where it has been abused in the past. So regardless of which side of the political spectrum you fall on, we have rights as people towards privacy. We have rights to make our own decisions, not be manipulated. And I'm not sure that we have the proper boundaries on this for us to be able to can say that we can do that yet.
Well, I think that's very sound advice.
Personal responsibilities is to cut things off and not listen to a lot of things, but ultimately we need to solve the problem.
That is very good, great observations and advice. It's the AI Tsunami by Guy Morris. Where do people follow your good work and keep tabs with what you're doing short of spying on you through your phone?
Well, Amazon, you can find me on Amazon and all the other bookstores. I'm distributed through Sunbury Press, but if you wanted to have more information, trailers, fact versus fiction, my other books, and follow me elsewhere, go to GuyMorrisBooks.com.
GuyMorrisBooks.com. There you go. All right. Well, thank you, Guy Morris, for coming on The Truth today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Been my pleasure, too. Thank you.
Everybody in America seems to be talking about communism, or at least democratic socialist, which often look a lot like communists to me. Dr. Brad Thayer has written a book. It's called America's 100-Year War, How to Win Against Communism. Dr. Thayer, welcome to The Truth. It is an honor to have you with us.
Well, thank you, John. It's my pleasure to join you today.
Aren't there laws in the United States that prohibit the spread of communism? Why are we even talking about this?
Indeed, there are, but they're no longer enforced. Sad to say, as you know, we've been struggling against communism for 100 years, since the Bolsheviks came to power in 1917. While we defeated the Soviet Union, we didn't defeat communism, and it's grown in strength in the United States to the point now where we have in New York City, Washington, D.C., Seattle, Los Angeles, Democratic politicians who are openly embracing communism. So this is an existential issue for the United States as a constitutional republic, and it must be addressed now.
Well, doesn't this go straight to the heart of what Ben Franklin said 200 years ago, that we gave you a republic if you can keep it? And, you know, the founders, and this is going to get me in trouble. Fact is, I don't care. I mean, I do care, but I'm willing to speak what I believe to be the truth. The founders did not intend the franchise to extend to everyone. It was limited to property owners. Now, I guess that just doesn't work in 2026, but there should be, shouldn't there, some qualification before you can vote in this country? I mean, shouldn't you be able to add 2 + 2 and maybe string a sentence together with some semblance of proper grammar before you're allowed to go in and vote for the direction of your city, state, or country? I mean, what's wrong with that? I mean, the stakes are pretty high, aren't they?
There are laws, but they're not enforced. So this is the issue. Communists are very good at penetrating the ideas industry. That is, our universities, K through 12 education, law schools. They're very good at essentially isolating aspects of American society and destroying them. And respect for the law, respect for American identity, or understanding of American identity are things explicitly, John, that they've targeted for destruction, which is why they're such a dangerous threat, as President Trump has identified. We have a lot of great laws on the books, and we have a lot of great traditions, norms, institutions in the United States, like assimilation for immigration. If you are fortunate to come to the United States, you have to assimilate. But communists targeted assimilation and have eroded it. So now with tens of millions of folks who've come into the United States, right, you're having great strains on American society, and you have the deep fracturing of American society that we witness in the States today.
Well, I keep trying to figure out who the puppet master is. The fact of the matter is I can't even find the curtain, let alone who's behind it. I do believe that all roads do seem to lead back to Obama in many respects. But then, you look at the division in this country, and I've said on this program for 4 years that this country is under assault, but it's not from a single actor. I think it is under assault from a multitude of different actors and states. And I don't believe that they're working in concert together, but I think they are in some ways cheering each other on. To wit, China, I believe, is openly attacking the United States on multiple levels, especially, I mean, we don't have to even think about it. We know they steal our intellectual property. They re-engineer the very same product, sell it back to our consumers cheaper. Of course they can sell it cheaper. They don't have any R&D. And then, you see under the Biden White House that they were able to float a spy balloon over our country. Now we know, proof positive, that they interfered in the 2020 election. That does not come as news to me. I have always believed that that was the case. And the COVID virus unquestionably came from the Wuhan laboratory. The question that nobody even asked, but I suspect that it was an intentional release. You look at all the harm that it did, particularly to upsetting President Trump's reelection in 2020.
Yes.
And the 16 million people that it killed worldwide. I don't know how they can sleep at night knowing that they wreaked that kind of carnage on humanity. But it did have the effect of deeply dividing our country, of disrupting our economy, of upsetting President Trump's reelection campaign. I think that they were being cheered on by the Soros people, those elites, billionaires that don't love America. I mean, I could go on. This is your interview, so I'll stop, but just ask you to tell me that I need to be institutionalized, or that maybe I'm onto something here.
I think that's it. It's George Soros, his son Alexander, now running the Soros Foundation. Neville Roy Singham, who's a communist based in Shanghai, who's working through his wife, who runs Code Pink, or ran Code Pink. Steve Jobs' widow, Emerson Collective. You have billionaires working to undermine American identity and destroy the U.S. as a constitutional republic, working hand in glove with the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. John, your audience may recall that the Chinese Communist Party declared people's war against the U.S. in 2019. And in fact, they have been at war with us since 1949 when they came to power. But they are at war with us, and they are working, again, hand in glove with folks in the Soros Foundation, Jobs' widow, Neville Royce Singham, these billionaires who are undermining American identity through many front organizations. You know, communists often don't work directly. They work through scores of front organization to mask their tracks. So we need to recognize we have an external enemy and we have an internal enemy, but both motivated by the same ideology and both motivated and directed towards the destruction of the U.S. as a constitutional republic. Those are the stakes. This is existential for the United States at this time. And it is a fight which is happening today. And we are one election away from losing the U.S. We can all understand what would have happened if Kamala Harris had won. All of us understand what will happen again if the Democrats come into power in 28. In the midterms, obviously, in 26, this will be a big start. But in 28, they'll abolish the Senate filibuster. They'll add new states. They'll bring in even tens millions more of people into the United States. And that underscores the fact that this is a neo-Bolshevik party. The Bolsheviks used to have an expression, the worse, the better. By that, they meant the worse things were in Russia before the revolution, the better it was for the communists. So the longer the war lasted, the more immiserated folks were, the better it was for the revolution. And we need to recognize that's what's happening now. John, this point is important. Remember the State of the Union address in February, where President Trump called attention to the American heroes in the gallery. There was the Army warrant officer who flew a Chinook helicopter after he'd been wounded in Venezuela in that operation to get Maduro. And he was awarded the Medal of Honor. But the Democrats would not stand to celebrate him or anybody else in that gallery. What does that show you? It shows you that you have a revolutionary party who wants to destroy America versus an American party, those who want to sustain it. And President Trump said, well, why don't the Democrats stand? He couldn't understand it. Mm-hmm. Well, they're not standing because they're not American. They're the worse, the better. They're trying to overthrow the United States and replace it with communist tyranny.
To what end? I mean, George Soros got his money by being a capitalist. His children are receiving the benefits of capitalism. Steve Jobs was certainly a capitalist. If anybody earned it the old-fashioned way he did, he brought himself up from his bootstraps and was intelligent and diligent and hardworking, and he risked, and he got a reward into the billions of dollars. What would possess his wife to want to turn to communism? It just doesn't make sense to me.
The appeals, I think, are several. One of which is a lot of people hate America. Frankly, hate America.
Why don't they leave? I mean, why come here? Why would Ilhan Omar come here so she can hate us? Just go back to Somalia and be done with it.
Right, but what they want to do is kill America. That's what they want to do, and they're here to do it. So you've got a lot of folks, and we should never underestimate their motivation. The hatred of the United States and the hatred of Western civilization is very real, and it's found throughout the West. We can see the same factors at work in Britain or in Europe, in Australia. You've got the same problem. So why do they do it? Well, we need to recognize they hate the U.S.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, we also need to recognize that they're doing what they're told, right? Again, because the communists have captured the ideas industry, they're able to set the stage for what's good and proper behavior, right? Among billionaires, at least. And part of that is to fund communism and communist activities. So we need to recognize it. Part of it's naivete, but part of it is an incandescent hatred of America as a constitutional republic and of Western civilization.
Well, a lot of the problem, and you're pretty much an academician. I mean, you've lectured at Harvard and the University of Oxford. You must feel like a man on an island in those institutions. I don't know about Oxford, but Harvard certainly has lost its way. And I have a lot of friends who attended Harvard who I respect and I very much like, but that institution has just gone off the rails. How does it happen? And aren't they poisoning our young people?
Exactly. That's Orwell wrote in 1984, right? The point of the party was to capture the present, to own the present, every aspect of the present. And if I own the present, I can rewrite the past. And if I can rewrite the past, I then control the future. So this is exactly what's happening. Communists are the New York Yankees of political warfare. They're really good at it. They know how to target ideas industry, penetrate them, take them over. K through 12 education, colleges, universities, media, our think tanks. Take them over, and then you're able to rewrite America's past. You're able to denigrate and attack and destroy American identity, our institutions, our values, our history, our great men. You're able to knock over statues, pull statues down and replace them with your favorite statues. And John, they do this, and they do it without apology, and they do it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's an urgency that they possess. And it's time for Americans to say no more.
I couldn't agree more.
Tolerating it.
You know, and this guy, Mandami, you know, he is an attractive individual. He speaks so effectively. He's I don't think anybody can deny that he's not a good communicator. But the stuff that he's spewing is just intellectually so dishonest, because as smart as he is, he has to know that it will never work. You cannot tax people at 50% locally, then layer on top of that a state tax and then a federal tax. There is no money left. There is no more incentive left to go to work. Does he really think that? But you know, the thing that is so troubling to me is that you look in all these communist countries, there is a huge lower and middle class and a very small elite upper class. They're the ruling class. They're the communists, and they're the ones who have all the money. It's thievery.
Yeah.
It's thievery.
John, I don't think Mandami cares. Again, the worse, the better. He doesn't care if he's destroying the U.S. through his policies. That's the point. Right? This isn't a byproduct. This is the intent of his activities, of the DSA activities, and of the modern Democratic Party. Right? They're a revolutionary movement remaking the United States, killing a constitutional republic to put in its stead communist tyranny. So the logic of it, the policies of it, anything that's going to advance the revolution, Mandami is going to embrace and tout. And there are no consequences, and there is no morality for these communists, right? Anything that's going to hurt Western civilization in America, they're in favor, right? They're not going to stand to celebrate American heroes. In fact, they're going to tear down American heroes to advance the revolution. Those are the stakes, John, and this is the fight right now. It's happening today.
Well, the really scary part to me is the people that do these things just don't appear to have any conscience at all. We talked about COVID and whether it was intentionally released or not. I've been reluctant to speculate that it was intentional, just because I could not convince myself that anyone could be that evil that they would do that. But then you look at the way that it has occurred, and the lies that we were exposed to, that we now know proof positive were just that, because we got to see Anthony Fauci in full display before the United States Senate earlier this week on Wednesday. It was a moment we've all been waiting for. How that man can sit there and take the Fifth Amendment after he's gotten a full pardon and hide behind this mask of immunity is beyond me. But it makes me wonder. I sit and ponder it from 30,000 feet. Could it be anything other than he hates America and is trying to destroy it?
I think so. I think this is a man who's loathsome, who made millions off of actually the pandemic, which he's responsible for unleashing.
He had the keys to the vault. He funded the Wuhan lab. He lied about funding the Wuhan lab. He lied about not doing gain-of-function research. He lied about the origin of the COVID pandemic. And then, as you point out, and we learned in the hearings, he profited to the tune of $3 or $4 million. He's worth $12 million. He gets a $400,000 a year pension, a chauffeur, a bodyguard. I mean, have we just completely lost our minds? I mean, I think that the full weight of the judicial system needs to come down upon him. I don't think for a moment that Joe Biden pardoned Anthony Fauci. I think someone that worked in the Biden White House took it upon themselves. Maybe it was a group of people who, that's the thing. You watch the Democrats on the dais earlier this week. Instead of holding him accountable, they look for ways to strain the truth, mask the truth, restate the truth in a defense of this person who is probably single-handedly responsible for allowing 1 million Americans to die from a pandemic that should have never taken place.
Indeed. And he crushed those who were telling the truth, right? He knew the truth, and he knew that there were some who were telling the truth, but he used all of the weight of his office, all of the weight of his prestige, which he had due to a corrupt media, to crush those who are actually telling the truth and investigating this. So he is, this is pure evil. And we can only hope that there's some accountability. There's some accountability for him or his minions who are not covered by a pardon. So we can only look forward to that day.
We've got a minute left, and I don't want to go over because you've been very generous with your time, and I don't want to end on a bad note. But I see that the book that you've written, America's 100 Years War: How to Win Against Communism, is available, I'm sure, on Amazon, right? Where else?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, I think wherever folks buy books.
Good. Well, I so appreciate your writing this book. You're doing your part. I noticed that the foreword was written by Steve Bannon. Now, I've been on Steve Bannon's show. I've been in his presence multiple times. I kind of like Steve Bannon. I used to like him more than I do now. But it looks to me like he's kind of a sketchy figure all of a sudden. With while he's railing on the CCP, that maybe he's had business dealings that have involved the CCP, that he testified against Roger Stone when there was nothing there. What's your take? Are you glad that he wrote your foreword, or how well do you know him? What do you think?
I'm absolutely. Steve has been locked on to the threat of communism for his professional life. He understands the danger of it, and he's laser focused on this threat. He's seen it march through the institutions. He's seen it march through, obviously, the American government. And he is a strong supporter of stopping it, and stopping it now. He knows what's at stake in this fight. And John, this is everything, right? If we are going to lose the constitutional republic, and we're going to lose it today, if we are not able to unite around essentially an effective anti-communist resistance. This is the midterms. Clearly in 2026, but it is the presidency in 2028, because if the Democrats come back, we know the filibuster will be removed. We know that they will add states. We know the Supreme Court will be packed. We know that tens of millions of more illegal aliens will be imported quickly into the United States. We know that they will be given voting. They will be allowed to vote. And that will be it for
I
the spirit
totally agree.
From the founding fathers. So it is everything that we recognize this threat and we address it. And so I'm so grateful that you're calling attention to this and that your audience is in it. Look, Americans have defeated many foes, and we can defeat communism, but we need to understand the threat and we need to understand who we are, because we stand on the shoulders of giants. We stand on our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents who struggled, fought, and who consecrated the country in their blood and in their sacrifice.
So many hundreds of thousands of men gave the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms. It's not to be taken lightly. And Dr. Bradley Thayer, he is the author of America's 100 Years War, How to Win Against Communism. Sage advice. The midterms are upon us. Every single American has to get up off the couch and go vote. If you don't, and you wake up one morning and the CCP flag is flying over our nation's capital, you have no one to blame except the person in the mirror. So let's all join hands, do our best, and fight, 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 just like President Trump urged us to do 2 years ago. We can do it again and save our country. Dr. Thayer, thank you again. And I hope you will come back on The Truth soon. And that is The Truth. And have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you, sir. My pleasure, John. Wonderful to join you today.
Thank you. Scott Wheeler is an investigative journalist, and he is also the author of a number of books, including Trading with the Enemy, How the Clinton Administration Armed China, Shadow Government, What Obama Doesn't Want You to Know About His Czars, and Promoting Decline, Obama versus America. Boy, do those titles have the ring of truth. Scott Wheeler, welcome to The Truth.
Thank you. It's good to be with you, John.
Who is Antifa?
Well, if you think of it in terms of global terror organizations, it would be similar to Al-Qaeda. It is global.
Who is Al-Qaeda?
It's heavily focused.
I hear all these names bannered about, and they ring hollow to me. So Antifa is a U.S.-based. Is it an organization? Is it like a loosely constructed confederation?
They don't have a base. Well, they don't have a base per se. They don't have a center of gravity, and they don't have a headquarters. They are scattered throughout the world, heavily concentrated in the United States right now, with organizations that are locally known. Like in Oregon, for example, you have Rose City Antifa, which is in Portland, and that's all it's known by. And then you have a branch in Seattle, you have a branch in LA, San Francisco, New York. They're everywhere, and they act independently, but they follow one another's operations. And so they communicate on Discord, which is a semi-private channel, kind of like Signal. And they can organize, and they can get groups from around the country to come to one place. They did this in 2020 frequently. They would show up in Washington, D.C. or Atlanta or New York City, wherever they wanted to concentrate attention. And so
I just don't have a good grasp of where their ideology stands. Would you say that they are right-wing conspiratorialist, left-wing anarchist? Are they just disruptors? I mean, do they have a leader? What is their mission, and what is their ideology? And just what are they up to?
Well, they're left wing. Yeah, they're left wing. They call themselves anti-fascists or anarchists. They use that A with the circle around it to stand for anarchist, but they really are not anarchists. They're more like socialists or communists, but they think they don't understand the political spectrum. They don't understand that fascism is the same as their ideology. They want central control to redistribute all the wealth from the wealthy people and the corporations to everybody else. But they don't understand that that is the very definition of fascism. So and so they are kind of lost in the woods, but they identify with left-wing organizations. And at times they have become the Democrat Party's militia. And they counted on them to create sow hate and discontent in areas where they want them.
So when you hear anti-fascist, I mean, I'm an anti-fascist. I don't want a ruler or a body of people that run roughshod over the citizens of this country. Where do their ideas of anti-fascism and mine diverge? Yeah, I would think you're anti-fascist, aren't you?
Of course, yeah, we all are. They don't realize.
Except Mandami. I'll tell you who the people that don't mind who welcome fascism are the people that want to be in charge and in control. They don't mind fascism as long as they get to make the decisions, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of where these groups go wrong. They think they're opposing fascism. It goes back to 1930s Germany. That is the origin of Antifa, was 1930s and 40s Germany. They were the communists fighting the Nazis. And so they think they are still in that fight, that they're fighting Nazis or fascists. The reality is, of course, that Nazism and fascism is all on the left, and that communism is not the opposite or the antithesis of fascism. It's the same political power structure. The reality, the odd oxymoron here too is they claim they're anti-fascist, but they're also anti-Israel and they're anti-Semitic, and so they hate Jews but call themselves anti-fascists. The guys that they were fighting in 1930s and 40s Germany was the Nazis, who also hated Jews. So they've almost gone and done a 180 and adopted the very political theories that they claim to hate. They just don't realize it. But they're clearly on the left. They are, at times, they work in concert with the Democrat Party, and they would identify with the communists, the socialists, the DSA, as they're referring to it now in the United States.
I have the sense that they would be the most miserable people on earth if they ever actually got their way.
Oh, they would. They would have their throats cut first by the people who took power. They just don't realize it.
So we heard that Antifa was at January 6th at the nation's capital. Have you looked into that at all?
I was there. I went there because I expected Antifa to be there. And
why aren't you in prison? Or why were you in prison?
Well, because I am a card-carrying journalist. I have a pass to be in the Capitol and at the White House, and so I was a legitimate journalist covering these things. There were some journalists who were prosecuted, but they were acting out of bounds, so to speak. They were crossing some lines that they should not have crossed, and they were not credentialed by the United States Senate, as I am. And so they are the ones that were arrested. I think there was about a half a dozen of them. But
yeah, there's one guy that's very prominent on as a guest on podcast. I can't recall his name, but
Yeah,
I think he spent 2 years in jail and then got out with the Trump pardon. I think he worked for the Daily Wire, if I'm not mistaken.
I think they picked him. It wasn't the Daily Wire. It was a different publication. I can't recall it, but I don't think he ever actually went to jail. He was prosecuted towards the end of the Biden administration. And so by the time he would have been sentenced or gone to trial, he was covered under the pardon. But for the most part, he was one of the ones making a lot of noise, and he had done a couple of things that probably invited trouble. For one, going into the Capitol when the Capitol Police had said stop, and they weren't always saying stop, but at one point they did, and so they had him on
at some
camera.
point they kind of surrendered and opened the doors and said, "Come on in." The vast majority of people that did enter the Capitol destroyed no property, touched no property, did no wrong, but ended up paying a very steep penalty for having entered the Capitol, albeit at the invitation of the Capitol Hill Police.
Yeah, if they had been left-wing protesters, there would have been no prosecutions. There wouldn't have been.
How can this happen in America?
Well, we let it, and a lot of Republicans went along with it. They were scared, and on January 6th, and nobody has really opened the investigation. I can tell you a lot of things about January 6th that very few people know, including there was a young man and young woman who were the first out of the Capitol, and they were standing on the steps. I interviewed them, took their photos, got their story. They took stuff out of Nancy Pelosi's office, and they showed it to me. I photographed it. They were videotaped in Nancy Pelosi's office, and neither one of them have been arrested.
Crazy.
They should have been two of the first people arrested, and they were not. Yeah, it's insane. My suspicion is that they were there to provoke others, and that's why they went in and came back out. They would have been perpetrators number 1 and 2, and nobody touched them. There's not even any evidence that they became cooperative witnesses for the state or anything else. So they came out, and then that's when things got out of hand and it turned into a riot. But my suspicion is, and the evidence would suggest, that the Democrats were going to try and ramp this up into something that they could use. And it went further than anyone expected. And then they used it to their advantage and to say that this was an insurrection. But there were definitely, Antifa was there. They were, it's demonstrably provable. Some were even held up by the Washington, D.C. police on their way to the Capitol on January 6th. They were detained, let go, and they had weapons. The only people with weapons in D.C. on January 6th were Antifa, and yet they were not charged.
Why now? So now we have the White House, both chambers of Congress, and the Supreme Court. Why are we allowing them to get away with all of the stuff that they continually do? It's just mind-boggling to me, frankly, Scott, that, the Democrats perpetuated slavery in this country. The Democrats fought the abolition of slavery. It was Abraham Lincoln, a Republican, who freed the slaves. And it was the Democrats who assassinated John Fitzgerald Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King. These were not Republican actors. It was LBJ and Allen Dulles. And then you go through the January the 6th. They accused Trump of leading an insurrection, yet they are the ones who convened an illegitimate commission in Congress to investigate January the 6th and did not follow the congressional rules. They did not allow the minority leader to appoint members of the January 6th Commission. And when they did bring witnesses before the commission, they allowed them, encouraged them to lie. I mean, Liz Cheney openly was texting that gal who worked for Mark Meadows and said that Trump grabbed the wheel of the beast and commanded them to drive to the Capitol. And it just turned out to be a certifiable lie. Has she been punished? Has she been investigated by a grand jury? Has she been investigated at all? It does not appear so. What's her name? Hey, Hutchison, somebody, Bailey Hutchison, something Hutchison. She lives in Atlanta, I understand. But why? I mean, why do we allow them to get off on with all this stuff without any repercussions?
For one thing, the Democrats control the narrative, and they have control of almost all the news media. Republicans are terrified of January 6th because the Democrats say anything that goes against their narrative is a conspiracy theory. And so Republicans are gutless for the most part. They won't open these investigations. Now they have the Justice Department. This would be a very good time to do this. But part of their problem is that for decades, the Democrat Party, which is the most corrupt institution in U.S. history, they control the rank and file of the Department of Justice, just like they do in the FBI, the Department of Defense, and the CIA. Most people don't remember this, but if you go back 20 years, the Democrats hated the FBI. They hated the CIA. They didn't trust them. Then after starting back in the 90s with Bill Clinton, they got control. They started putting people. We had a phrase back in the 90s for these people that got ranked fast at the Department of Defense, called them the Clinton generals. And they got control of the Department of Defense. They were doing the same thing at the FBI, the Department of Justice, the CIA. Once they got their people in charge there, all of a sudden, Democrats and the CIA became close allies of one another. Democrats would defend the CIA against any suggestion that they had done something untoward. So that's what we saw happened about 2015, 2016 is when this all switched over, and the Democrat Party had control of the FBI and the CIA. They had already gained control of the Defense Department and the Department of Justice, but the rank and file prosecutors, the people who work at the DOJ, most of them are Democrat Party hacks, and they serve the party's interests, not the country's interest, and certainly not the interest of justice.
Or the truth, by the way. I mean, that's the thing that just nags at me, that you've got a guy like Anthony Fauci who flagrantly, blatantly, I don't have enough adjectives to describe his intentional acts that were based on sheer lies. So he goes to Congress, he's grilled for 3 hours, and the most we got from him was, on the advice of counsel, I choose to invoke my Fifth Amendment rights assured by the Constitution, which is not a right, by the way, as Rand Paul has been very clear about, and I happen to agree from a legal standpoint. If you get a full pardon, it constitutes full immunity from prosecution. You have no Fifth Amendment rights because you can't be prosecuted for anything that you say that would incriminate you, except in the court of public opinion. And I'm sorry, Dr. Fauci, that is not a right or privilege in our form of government, period. Hard stop.
Well, the fact that he was a government employee indicates that he owes the Congress and the American people explanations, but it also indicates that he may not have full faith in the pardon that he got. He may have feared that that wouldn't hold up in court because it was signed with an auto pen. All of that is yet to be challenged yet. Hopefully it will be, but the pardon may not be worth the paper it's written on.
Well, why
in
are
the
we
end.
not investigating that? Why has the oversight committees of either house or the Judiciary Committee not subpoenaed the operators of the auto pen and asked them on what authority did you use the auto pen to pardon Anthony Fauci? Who told you to do it? It seems like those narratives or stories that they would come up with would melt like a hot ice cream cone on Pennsylvania Avenue in August. So, the right to pardon, they say, is perhaps one of the president's greatest powers. But a clerk working in the White House does not have presidential authority. So I don't know what you ascribed it to. At a minimum, it would be forgery. It would be tantamount to committing forgery, using the president's signature for something that he did not authorize. Why are we not hot on the trail?
Well, it's a good question. I wonder myself, and on the one hand, I think they probably figure that their hands are full. The Democrats, again, own the narrative. And so it's very difficult for Republicans to push back in their minds. If they were, if they were stronger, if they could argue better, they could probably get a lot more done, but they just don't. They don't have it. They can't push back. They're, for one, if you look just how the Iran war is being handled, Democrats are out there saying Trump's war of choice, and not one Republican have I heard respond with, no, Iran started this war. They've been killing Americans for decades, for 47 years. They killed American soldiers in Iraq. At least 650, I think it could be as many as over 1,000 American soldiers in Iraq were killed by Iranians. And yet they won't even offer the counter narrative that this is not a war started by Trump. It's Trump trying to finish a war that Iran has started years ago.
In 1978, when they took our embassy in Tehran and held 66 diplomats hostage for 444 days. To me, that's provocation enough to go in and bomb the hell out of them. Not to mention, as you point out, they've sponsored terrorism around the world for 50 years and have killed thousands of U.S. men and women in the armed services. And then they've killed 43,000 of their own people in this calendar year. Any of those are enough for me to say, go to war with Iran. They've got to be stopped permanently.
The president has yet to make his casus belli, and that's one of the reasons we just are kind of marking time, I guess you'd say, because Republicans are weak, Democrats control the narrative, and the president needs to go out and explain all of this and put an end to the Democrats being able to say, call it Trump's war of choice.
Yeah,
Trump's war in Iran.
He's made the points, but when he goes to the gaggle, all he talks about is Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. And I'm one of those people who are somewhat skeptical about Iran's nuclear weapon capabilities based on the intelligence officer, what was his name? Anthony, help me out. The guy that resigned from the...
the guy from Washington.
The guy he worked for Tulsi Gabbard. Huh?
Yeah, he is. I wouldn't put much stock in anything he says. He's a Tucker Carlson sock puppet.
Yeah, but I hear you, but I can't really agree with you on that one. I happen to think Tucker Carlson is a very honest broker. And I think that he tells the truth. Anthony tells me it was Joe Kent that I was trying to recall. Yeah. And what's in it for Joe Kent to resign from one of the most powerful positions in the federal government?
I've seen a lot of his interviews. He seems to be motivated for the right reasons. I'm sorry?
Well, he was under investigation for one thing because he likely was leaking classified material to people like Tucker Carlson, who's, I can tell you, he's an absolute idiot and a buffoon. I've known him for years. He's not,
Tucker?
once his father passed away, he went over the brink.
Where is he over the brink?
Anti-Israel. Well, he's anti-Israel.
I don't think that's a fair
thing.
statement. Scott, I don't think that's fair.
He
I don't
believes
think
in
he's
UFOs.
anti-Israel.
Oh, he most certainly is. He has been on a one-man campaign against.
Have you watched his podcast? Have you listened to him?
Read it many times. I've watched his quotes. I didn't realize there was anyone who wasn't aware that he has been on an anti-Israel crusade for a long time.
Well, was Charlie Kirk anti-Israel?
I don't think so.
Well, they were brothers. They were joined at the hip on Israel. I happened to be in their camp. I've got a lifetime of Jewish friends. Bernie Marcus, who was one of my heroes in life, who was the founder of Home Depot, maxed out both he and his wife to both of my campaigns that I ran in Georgia. So I don't think you can question my lack of anti-Semitism. However, I am quick to point out that Jews in this country make up 1.5% of our population, 35% of our wealth, and 85% of our media. Netanyahu goes to the White House more than most members of the Senate. And all I'm saying is I am totally in favor of supporting Israel. Strategically, I think it's very important to us in the Middle East. But I also can say both things can be true, that they have a disproportionate share of influence inside our government and inside our country. And they are overtly and aggressively waging a public relations campaign inside our country to get to our young people. And Netanyahu has said so. So I think that is wrong.
If the Jews control 85% of the media, how is it that nearly all of the media is calling the war in Gaza a genocide on behalf of the Hamas extremists? I think that's a hard case to make.
I don't know that that's true, that the majority of the media are siding with the Palestinians in Gaza. I just don't believe that that's an accurate statement.
Last time you watched
But there
CNN
are members of the media
News?
who say that. I'm sorry?
When was the last time you watched CNN or NBC News?
Well, I watch CNN on a daily basis, and it's very hard for me to do, but I do it from an intellectual honesty standpoint. I want to know what the other side is saying and open my mind to all possibilities so that I can come to a honest conclusion. And I don't think you can do that if you only watch Fox. But I think Charlie and I think Tucker have only said that our support of Israel is lopsided and it needs to be reined in. We've got veterans who are sleeping on the streets in New York. I know that because I've spoken with them personally when I did my show from there. And meanwhile, we're sending Israel billions of dollars every year. Estimates range from $3 billion in direct military aid to over $30 billion. And the fact is, I just don't really know where the truth lies on that. But I think it's worth exploring and opening our minds to the possibility.
I think that's a fallacious syllogism to compare what our. I think that's a fallacious syllogism to compare veterans sleeping on the streets in New York while we support Israel militarily. That's a strategic defense component of our strategic defense.
Okay, well, let's just
support
say that
the
we
Israeli
weren't.
military. It doesn't have anything to do with veterans sleeping on the street.
Well, I think it has everything to do with veterans sleeping on the street, because let's just say that we had a more balanced support of Israel's military. Do you think that the people in Israel would be able to have free education, free health care, free housing, free, lots of stuff is free? I mean, it is as close to socialism as you can get. I don't even know that it's close. I think it is a socialist state. If we weren't propping them up militarily, wouldn't they have to spend some of that money to protect themselves instead of giving all this stuff away to their own people, while our veterans have been abandoned and are sleeping in the streets?
That's a canard. John, that's not even true.
I don't know what a canard is. I don't know what that other adjective was that you gave.
It is, well, first of all, it's not true. That Israel's not a socialist state, for one thing. Secondly, we benefit by propping up their military, not propping it up. They actually improve our weapon systems and give it back to us. They've improved a lot of our weapon systems over the years, made us more lethal as a military. They're also our eyes and ears in the Middle East, which we need desperately.
I think they're our eyes and ears inside the U.S. as well. I think Mossad and the CIA work hand in hand. And I don't know the extent to which Mossad operates in this country, but it's concerning. I am led to believe that most of the redactions in the JFK files are redacting Israel.
Well, that's another one of the Tucker Carlson lies that he.
Well, how do you know that's a lie?
The CIA of the because it's ridiculous. He took the fact that the CIA was tracking Lee Harvey Oswald around the world, his movements around the world, because he was a defector to the Soviet Union and then came back to the United States. So the CIA was monitoring what he did around the world. And then he on behalf of either Cuba or the Soviet Union, killed Kennedy. And then Tucker takes the fact that the CIA monitored him around the world to claim that was the CIA was involved, and how could they not know? Was his really stupid comment about it? How could they not know that?
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Wheeler. I, with all due respect, you are spreading propaganda. Lee Harvey Oswald's fingerprints are nowhere. I listen to you. It is not a fact. Lee Harvey Oswald was employed by the CIA. An instructor at a CIA camp told his sons that he instructed Lee Harvey Oswald in a CIA camp that trained on riflery, and that he didn't think he had long to live. And they said, "Why is that?" And he said, "I've talked too much and I've seen too much, and they're going to come after me." 6 months later,
I've never seen
was gunned
one
down in a
shred
bar.
of evidence to back that up.
He was gunned down in a bar in Miami. I can give you a lot. I spend the rest of the day talking about this. There
was no shred of evidence ever of that is the case.
Well, it's a story that ran in the Miami Herald. I'll find it and send to you a copy of it. Number two, there were no fingerprints of Lee Harvey Oswald in the sniper's nest. There was no paraffin on his body when he was captured. His immediate reflexive statement was, "I'm just a patsy." He was a setup to take the fall, and Lyndon Baines Johnson ordered the assassination of Kennedy in consultation and working with Allen Dulles, who supervised it, and J. Edgar Hoover, who covered it up. And Johnson had a hitman named Mac Wallace, who assassinated the agricultural commissioner in Texas because LBJ and Billy Saul's Estes took illegally ill-begotten cotton subsidies in Texas. The agricultural commissioner, let me finish. The agricultural commissioner was investigating him. Mac Wallace shot him in cold blood at the country club in front of a dozen witnesses. A jury of 12 men and women convicted him of murder. On the day that he was convicted, the judge released him for time served, and Mac Wallace's fingerprint was discovered in the sniper's nest. So we could spend the rest of the day talking about this. If you want evidence, I can talk to you.
Look, I'm not here to discuss Kennedy, and I do have to go to another interview here in just a moment.
Well, I think it's important.
I do have to go to another interview here in just a moment. So,
well, you're welcome to come back on.
Well, I just disagree with what you've said. I've never seen a shred of evidence of any of that. And I've seen a lot of conspiracy stories that have been debunked.
They're not
but I've never seen
stories.
anything like that.
Roger
so I can't
Stone's
really
book,
comment on it.
The case against LBJ, the men who killed Kennedy, David Talbot, the Devil's Chessburg, Mark Lane, the Rush to Judgment, and Douglas's The Unspeakable. Bobby Kennedy Jr. says that the CIA killed his uncle and his father. And so I think that it's important, if we're going to maintain our republic and our freedoms and our democracy, that we assume the moral high ground. Assassinating politicians and doing the dastardly deeds that these people have done is destroying this country. And you should be on the front line.
We're going to have to agree to disagree. And I've got to go to another interview.
You can disagree
here
that today is Wednesday, but that doesn't change the facts. All right. Well, thank you for coming on. Scott Wheeler, an author and self-described investigative journalist.